I am Mr. 76. I call myself many things. If you've seen any of my content, you may know that I am a Tartarianist. Ultimately, I'm a man on a personal yet very public quest. I'm on a quest for truth, and I'm not going to stop until I find the answers to all of the questions that I have. I have a lot of questions which the mainstream has simply failed to answer. I opened Pandora's box, and once it's been opened, you can't shut it. I'm a New Yorker. I became an expat way back in January 2003 when I left America to travel Europe, and I settled here in Wales. Since I was a child, I've been privileged to have seen and visited so many large stone buildings. I recall when I was maybe 14 years old taking part in a youth mock caucus at the New York State Capitol building. Basically acting like legislators, sitting in the chamber, pretending to be legislating. I sat in the large chamber, eyes fixated on the marvel or the architecture of the building itself. I paid more attention to the intricate details of the walls within the chamber than anything we were discussing, and I kept asking people next to me, how do you think they built that? In what became a response that has become oh so familiar, all I got back was a simple, mainstream narrative, almost dismissal of my questions, as if my asking questions was annoying or somehow disruptive. I knew then that something was wrong. I knew then that something just didn't quite fit. I also saw that no one else was looking around. No one else shared my inquisitiveness. Everyone just acted like it was all business as usual. Nothing to see here. It didn't sit well with me, but at the time and without peers to share my inquisitiveness with, it fell to the background of my mind, but became an ever-present fixture in my thoughts. As years went by, and after seeing more and more structures that didn't quite make sense to me, I became convinced that not only was something wrong with the world, but that we were being lied to. Again, at the time when I was young, literally no one would even humor these ideas, so I kept them to myself. Instead of speaking out loud, I turned those thoughts into a little hobby. I found myself living just outside of Manhattan, New York City, and started working in the city. I would commute to work and marvel at all of the structures, the ones that appeared older. The ones with large columns, the large stone buildings that seemed so much older than most. I would visit museums and would visit large cathedrals to admire the perfection of the construction. The angles, the way the stones were connected, how there were no faults. Perfect lines, perfectly smooth stones. Again, I knew something was wrong, something was amiss, but also that no one else seemed to care. No one else looked at the things the way that I did. After years of this being a consistent aspect of my thoughts and my travels around New York City, I found myself on a plane having said goodbye to that life as I embarked on what would become a rebirth of self when I left America. And that's where I truly began my metamorphosis into a real truth seeker. I arrived in the UK with nothing but a few bags of my belongings, ready to begin my new life, starting off in the magical land of Wales. Almost immediately, I knew that my journey had led me closer to the truth. What that truth was, I still didn't know. It would take me many years longer before I even came close to connecting the dots, but that didn't stop my inquisitiveness, my curiosity. As I mentioned, I set out on an adventure across Europe. These were the days before everyone had a supercomputer in their pockets to guide them, and I had nothing but a fat European travel guidebook to steer my way. My first stop was Brussels. If you're not familiar, let me paint a picture for you. Every other step, every other glance, left or right, was one building after another in what felt like an alien world. A landscape riddled with outstanding structures, massive doorways, pillars that rose to unimaginable heights, marvelous stonework. Perfect in every aspect, I wandered and found myself in the Brussels Central Square and just sat there in a state of shock from the revelations I was witnessing. How? Why? When? These questions overtook my every thought. This trip took me from Brussels to Bruges, then Amsterdam. From there I went to Berlin. From there I took a train to Prague, then onwards to Vienna, Austria. I then crashed a moped into a bus in Rome. I continued onwards to Florence. Then I walked to the top of the Leaning Tower of Pisa with all the other tourists. I went to Nice in the French Riviera. I made a stop in Monaco, actually gambling and winning some money in the famous Monte Carlo casino. before moving on to a heavy trip through Spain. First stop Madrid, then Valencia, Malaga and the Costa del Sol, onwards to Granada, walking up and through the famous Alhambra, to Seville, staying across the street from the famed Seville Cathedral, whose bells rang so loudly the cheap hostel I was staying in shook like there was an earthquake. Then traveled way up north to Basque Country, to San Sebastian. I ended my European adventure in Bilbao after about 4 to 5 months and after visiting 20 different cities. I saw more marvels than I can quickly recite to you all here now, but what I can say is that by the time this trip ended, I was a cup overflowing with questions and further convinced that everything I knew, all that I was taught, was a fabrication. Now I was back in Wales and settled in the capital city, Cardiff. I familiarized myself with the city, a city full of buildings whose official narratives I quickly dismissed. I still didn't have the bridge, the missing link to tie it all together. 20 long years went by, with me living a full life here, ups and downs, while one thing remained constant, my curiosity over the buildings I saw and visited frequently. Then one day, I was flipping through TikTok and stumbled into a video by a dude calling himself the Bully Slayer, where he asked, "So you want to learn more about Tartaria? Good, that's good." I was like, what? What's Tartaria? What's he talking about? Mud flood? Ancient advanced civilization kept hidden from us? Lies and false narrative masking the truth of a reset? Finally, after so many years of questions, I finally found the bridge I'd been searching for, the missing dot that helped me connect all of my thoughts. And once the dots were connected, I had an overwhelming desire to go out to the many places I'd been before, but now beginning a true quest for truth. A renewed energy flowed through me. That's when I took my phone and first filmed myself visiting Cardiff Museum and looking at the building itself, searching for evidence of the existence of the Tartarian Empire. That's when I first began as Mr. 76, and it all started with my series Tartaria in Wales. I never set out with any delusions of grandeur or any intent on fame or fortune. I set out with the only intent being to connect with others and to share what I was finding. At first, I simply hoped I'd have some random discussions with others who were like-minded and who shared some of the questions I myself harbored for so long. Little did I know what I was getting myself into. As I continued my explorations, walking the streets of Cardiff, revisiting sites I'd passed 100 times before, something inside me began to shift. I wasn't just seeing buildings anymore. I was hearing them. Not in the way people hear voices, not psychosis, not metaphor, but like a vibration, a feeling in the fingertips, a whisper behind the ear, a resonance that made the hairs on the back of my neck rise. It was as if these structures, these ruins of the old world, were waiting for someone to remember them, waiting for someone to listen. One of the first major realizations that I had was simple but devastating. We didn't build these, we inherited them. And whoever did build them, they were advanced, not just technologically, but spiritually, architecturally, energetically. Their structures weren't just grand, they were precise, tuned, alive. These people understood harmony. They understood that architecture could be more than shelter. It could be song, it could be vibration, it could be medicine. The deeper I went, the more I began to study the old world's obsession with symmetry, sacred geometry, and ratios that mirrored nature, the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, all encoded in stone. Compare that to today's cold slabs of concrete and steel, square rooms, dead angles. Our ancestors didn't just build structures, they built instruments, and the music has stopped. Look at star forts. They're everywhere, perfect, fractal-like designs laid across the planet, supposedly for defense. But zoom out on Google Earth and ask yourself, who builds military fortresses in sacred geometry? With alignments that matched celestial grids and magnetic flow lines. These were not just forts, they were nodes, points on a planetary energy grid, and now they sit silently, overgrown, repurposed, or turned into tourist traps. It wasn't just star forts. It was the towers, the amazing domes, the outlandish minarets, the steeples that rise like tuning forks into the sky. These weren't just for decoration. Many of them have no interior access, no practical function, no stairs, no rooms. Some still had their copper domes, no kitchens, no bathrooms. Others were stripped, turned into bell towers or clock towers. But when you follow the patterns, copper on top, water underneath, quartz or granite at the foundation, you begin to see it. These were not religious symbols. They were machines. They were resonance chambers. They were conduits. And it all leads back to energy. Not coal, not oil, not wires, ether. That elusive fifth element, the force the ancients believed flowed through everything. Nikola Tesla knew it, so did the builders of old. Tartarian cities weren't wired, they were tuned. I visited an old Capitol building once. Huge copper dome, symmetrical layout, stonework that hummed when I touched it. The guide told me it was built in the early 1900s, but the blueprints showed copper coils in the foundation. Who puts coils in the dirt for a decorative dome? It was aligned with magnetic north. It was laid out in sacred proportions. Whatever it once did, it wasn't doing it anymore, but the memory of it was still there. And standing beneath it, I could feel it, not just awe, but grief. Because we don't build like this anymore. We can't. We've lost the map. We've lost the frequency. And maybe that's the point. Because if Tartaria had free energy, if it had resonance-based architecture, etheric transmission, decentralized power, then everything about our modern world is a scam. No electrical grids, no oil wars, no energy monopolies. Imagine a world where energy is as free as breath, as abundant as sunlight. That's what we lost. And then came the mud. I've seen the photos, you have too. Buildings being uncovered in the 1800s, not constructed, unearthed. Half-buried entrances, windows at ground level, doors that go nowhere. Official history says they raised the street levels or built with basements, but tell me, who decorates a basement with full archways and carved pillars? Who sculpts underground cornices? The truth is simple. These buildings were buried. And what's worse, it wasn't nature. It was deliberate. It was an act of erasure, a planetary cover-up. Whole cities destroyed by fire, submerged by floods, ravaged by earthquakes. A great reset. Repopulated. The infamous orphan trains, empty hospitals, world's fairs that appeared overnight and vanished just as fast. It was all part of the reset, not just of buildings, but of memory. Because when you erase memory, you erase identity, and when people forget who they are, you can make them into anything. But now the whispers are returning, not just to me, to all of us. Every person who's ever looked at a church and thought, this looks like a machine. Every soul who's walked by a sunken window and felt something stir inside. Every child who stared at a columned courthouse and thought, this wasn't built for us. You are not alone. You are remembering. And memory is revolution. I began this journey looking for answers, and instead, I found resonance. The hum of a forgotten empire still vibrates beneath our feet. In the domes, in the spires, in the columns, in the symmetry, in the silence. They built a world in harmony with the earth. And now we build in discord. But the song isn't gone. It's just waiting for us to listen. We live in a control system. While some are awake to this fact, a great many others are still fully and willfully locked in this system. As you embark on your own quest for truth, to break the chains that bind us, the system will resist and it will fight back. It will tap into the minds it still holds under the stranglehold of its lazy grip. It will pull on the strings of the ever-present societal cognitive dissonance in an all-out effort to discredit you, to dismiss you, to break you, to shame you into falling back in line. They will call you crazy. They will say these crazy ideas. Then it will all have been worth it. If you've reached this point, something inside you has already shifted. You've seen beyond the veil, felt the hum of forgotten frequencies, and heard the call of a world that refuses to remain buried. Tartaria was never fully lost. It laid waiting for us. We are the Empire remembering. This isn't about closure, it's about ignition. A passing of the torch, not as an ending, but as a continuation of a story far older than we've been told. If you've come this far, you've felt it, you know. The fire has already been lit inside of you. Now it's time to understand what it truly means. We are the ones chosen, or perhaps choosing, to bridge the forgotten with the possible, the myth with the mirror, the past with the future. It starts with memory, not just facts or timelines, but cellular memory, soul memory, dream memory, that strange feeling you've always had, that something was missing, that something didn't quite fit in this world. It wasn't a flaw, it was a signal, a breadcrumb. That's what led you here. You've walked streets that whispered to you. You've felt the pull of ancient architecture, the alignment of sacred geometry, the tremble in your chest when truth passes through. You've cried at buildings others walk past. You've had dreams of cities you've never seen yet know intimately. That is not madness. That is resonance, and resonance is how the Empire remembers. We don't need to rebuild the towers to bring Tartaria home. We need only tune ourselves to the consciousness that built them in the first place. That consciousness was unity. Unity with the earth, with the stars, with each other. Tartaria thrived because it was built on coherence, on harmony. Its architecture, technology, and society weren't in conflict with nature. They were in conversation with it. And that's what we've forgotten, how to listen. But we're remembering now. So what comes next? We create. We build spaces of resonance, online, in our homes, in our communities. We share what we know. We make the invisible visible. We document the whispers. We guard the frequency. We honor the sacred. We teach our children how to see the old world within the new. And we live fully, radically, with beauty, because that's the most Tartarian thing we can do, to live in reverence, to choose awe over fear. To build something that lasts, not in stone alone, but in soul. You are the return. You are the torch. You are the echo becoming voice. Tartaria lives through you. So walk tall. Speak gently, dream wildly. You are not just remembering the Empire. You are becoming it. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, follow, and share. Mr. 76 signing out.